After that, it seemed as if Bulger had disappeared from the face of the earth.
Welcome to Watch Mojo. And today we'll be looking at updates on the most well-known or notorious criminals who have appeared on the most wanted list, regardless of whether or not they've been captured.
The FBI will do another push on this case.
Alexis Flores. A Honduran man, Alexis Flores was added to the FBI's most wanted list in 2007. 7 years later, he was going by the name Carlos and befriended Jorge Contreras of Philadelphia.
There's a case out of Philadelphia that I don't want anyone to ever forget about.
Contreras helped Carlos find work as a handyman. On August 3, 2000, the body of Herena de Jesus was found with a bloody t-shirt nearby.
And 5 days later, her body was found in the basement of the empty apartment building where Carlos resided.
Contreras recognized the shirt as the one he had given to Carlos, but the handyman had already fled. Flores was arrested in 2002 for a separate crime and deported back to Honduras. His DNA was added to the national database and eventually linked to the unsolved murder of De Jesus.
What we do know from authorities is that Alexis Flores uses a number of names, a number of birth dates, identities.
Unfortunately, Flores was already gone and has remained missing, and on the most wanted list ever since. John Parsons. After robbing a gas station and stealing a car, John Parsons was pursued by Ohio police officer Larry Cox. Tragically, Parsons shot and killed Cox during the chase, and he was arrested about 2 months later following an investigation. He was placed in the Ross County Jail but escaped on July 29, 2006, earning him a spot on the FBI's list.
I had about a 20-foot drop into the alley. The soles of my jail shoes were thin. It would be like dropping 20 feet barefoot. But I had no choice.
He was also featured 3 different times on America's Most Wanted, as he remained a fugitive. His third appearance occurred on September 30th, 2006, and he was caught and arrested less than a month later.
It's just kind of a cold chill went through my body, elation, I guess.
Parsons was sentenced to life in prison, and to this day remains inside the Toledo Correctional Institution. Víctor Manuel Gerena. On April 11, 2010, Víctor Manuel Gerena broke a record by holding the most time on the FBI's most wanted list.
Gerena was merely the inside man and the face of the operation, but there was much more at play behind the scenes.
He was added nearly 26 years earlier on May 14, 1984, following another broken record. Herena had taken part in the infamous White Eagle bank robbery, which at the time was the largest cash heist in American history. It occurred on September 12, 1983, and saw a guerrilla group named Los Macheteros robbing a Connecticut Wells Fargo depot.
We don't feel it's a robbery. We believe it's an expropriation.
They walked away with $7 million in cash, the modern equivalent of $21 million. Herena eventually fled to Cuba and was placed on the most wanted list, but to no avail.
The FBI offered a reward up to $1 million for information leading directly to the arrest of Víctor Manuel Gerena.
He was never caught and was removed from the list in 2016. Ralph Bucky Phillips. Going by the nickname Bucky, Ralph Phillips had a long history with the law and even became somewhat of a legend around the western New York and Pennsylvania areas.
Remember Ralph Bucky Phillips? He was on the run for several months back in 2006 before he was caught in Pennsylvania.
T-shirts were made and even a local burger was named after him. But the morbid fun stopped on June 10, 2006, when Phillips shot and seriously injured a state trooper named Sean Brown. 2 months later, he shot troopers Donald Baker Jr. and Joseph Longobardo, with the latter eventually dying of his injuries. Phillips was added to the most wanted list on September 7, 2006, and captured just 1 day later.
Here's what the head of the agency at the time said the night Phillips was caught.
Bottom line is, good guys won here.
He pleaded, in his words, guilty as hell, and was sentenced to life in prison. He is currently incarcerated in New York's Upstate Correctional Facility.
There are certainly always lessons to be learned,
Donald Eugene Webb. When the aforementioned Víctor Manuel Gerena broke the record for the longest time on the most wanted list, he overtook Donald Eugene Webb. A career criminal, Webb shot and killed police chief Gregory Adams on December 4, 1980. An investigation traced the shooting to Webb, and he was placed on the most wanted list on May 4, 1981.
Ultimately found their man They didn't forget him. They honored the chief.
Webb became a national figure, appearing on both Unsolved Mysteries and America's Most Wanted. Unfortunately, the notoriety did not help, and Webb was removed from the list on March 31st, 2007. Webb's widow later came forth and confessed that she had been harboring Webb before he died in 1999.
A civil suit filed against Webb's ex-wife, Lillian Webb, claimed there was a secret room inside the North Dartmouth home where a cane was discovered.
She led police to the buried remains, and they were positively identified as belonging to the uncaptured criminal.
In the end, it took shovels to unearth answers in a long-running mystery: what happened to fugitive Donald Eugene Webb?
Alton Coleman. Along with his accomplice Deborah Brown, Alton Coleman committed a series of 8 killings throughout the summer of 1984.
Beneath a blanket, wrapped in a man's corduroy jacket, the investigators found the young girl.
The murders spanned 6 different states. Following the death of Tawny Story, the FBI made a special example out of Coleman and included him as the 11th most wanted criminal on the top 10 list.
The magnitude and the importance of it, that, you know, you've already got 10 that are bad, but here's one that's so bad, but we don't have room to put anybody else on. We're going to make an exception and put him on anyway, even though he's number 11.
This was only the 10th time in its history that an 11th person had been included. Unfortunately, Coleman would go on to kill 2 more people before he was arrested on July 20th, 1984. Coleman was sentenced to death and executed at the Southern Ohio Correctional Facility in 2002.
He repeated, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, and continued with that.
Brown is currently serving life in the Dayton Correctional Institution. Ramzi Yousef. Perhaps one of the most infamous terrorists in American history, Ramzi Yousef conducted a slew of crimes.
Receipts showed that in November, Yousef used an alias to buy chemicals.
He helped bomb Philippine Airlines Flight 434, killing 1 and injuring 10. He planned the Bonjinka plot, which looked to assassinate Pope John Paul II, blow up airplanes, and crash one into the CIA headquarters. But most famously, he conducted the World Trade Center bombing of 1993, which killed several and injured over 1,000. It was the latter that landed Yousef on the most wanted list, and he remained on it for over 2 years after fleeing to Pakistan.
The fact that he was moving around throughout the world, several countries, indicates a wide range of support that he and his compatriots had.
He was finally arrested in 1995 and extradited to the U.S., where he was given 2 life sentences. He is currently serving time in Colorado's ADX Florence. James Whitey Bulger. There are few crime bosses as notorious as Whitey Bulger. The leader of Boston's Winter Hill Gang, Bulger was eventually convicted of racketeering and murder, among others.
We're talking about charges that would mean if they ever catch Whitey, he ain't ever coming out.
But before that, he was the 2nd most wanted person by the FBI, behind only Osama bin Laden. Bulger went into hiding in 1994 and was placed on the most wanted list on August 19, 1999.
The FBI created this public service announcement.
60-year-old Grieg is the girlfriend of 81-year-old Bulger.
He was even featured on America's Most Wanted 16 times. Bulger remained free for the next 12 years until a neighbor tipped off authorities and revealed that he was living in Santa Monica.
The tipster specifically described that they were caring for this cat and their love for this cat.
He was quickly arrested and given 2 life sentences before dying in 2018 at the age of 89. William Bradford Bishop Jr. This former Foreign Service officer has an odd distinction, and that's that he was added to the most wanted list nearly 40 years after committing his crime. Bishop killed his family, consisting of his wife, mother, and 3 sons, on the evening of March 1st, 1976.
Authorities say after slaughtering his entire family inside their Maryland home, William Bradford Bishop Jr. headed south.
His motive remains unknown, although he had recently been denied a promotion at work, leading some to suspect that the killings were stress-related. Either way, Bishop drove his deceased family nearly 300 miles to North Carolina and burned their bodies before going on the lam.
Once he walked away from the station wagon, he vanished.
Bishop was placed on the most wanted list until 2014 and remained on it for only 4 years before he was taken off of it in 2018.
He potentially could be in a cabin up in somewhere as a recluse with a beard, because I don't discount anything.
He would be 87 years old as of 2023. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Eric Rudolph. It was 1:20 a.m. on July 27, 1996, when a bomb went off in Atlanta's Centennial Olympic Park.
It just happened so quickly.
Thanks to the quick work of security guard Richard Jewell, only one person died in the blast. 3 more bombings followed, with Rudolph targeting 2 medical facilities and a lesbian bar.
And what you're seeing is a state of chaos down here. Almost people are scrambling, fire officials, police officials.
One more person, Birmingham police officer Robert Sanderson, was killed in these subsequent attacks. Witnesses helped identify a man named Eric Rudolph as the serial bomber, and he was placed on the most wanted list on May 5, 1998. He wasn't caught until 2003, when a police officer found him looting through a dumpster in North Carolina.
Rudolph is the type of individual who seeks attention.
He was given life in prison and is incarcerated at ADX Florence with fellow terrorist Ramzi Yousef. What do you make of these stories? Let us know in the comments below.